Hi YouTube. It's a long time not posting any video. Yeah, that is because my life got a bit complicated with this virus thing, and so I'm away from the normal activity that I was doing, that is gem cutting. But I have to thank you so much for your views, and thank you so much for the questions that you make and the nice comments that you leave. And so I have to thank you very much because you are many and you have the patience to follow my videos and to see the content that I post. So I thank you very much for that. Today I want to talk about the feeling of the gemstones, because I had so many requests and so many questions about the videos about this specific topic. As you see from the videos that I posted earlier, I filled up stones with like emeralds and other porous stones, either with resins, which I prefer, or you can do it also with oil as the traditional way to fill up, for example, emeralds. So there are many questions that you are posing to me in the net, on YouTube and through the email, and I thank you so much for it. So today I would like to talk a bit more about this and to guide you a bit better. Now, why do we fill up gemstones? Some gemstones, they present not inclusions, but they represent real cracks into the crystal itself. Now, these fissures can, these cracks, these crevices can reach the surface or not, depending on the morphology of the gemstone, like the way it is made. Cracked stones or included stones usually are cheaper, less value of the ones which are actually clean within and don't present any cracks or imperfections. This is the norm. There are different kind of stones on Earth, of course. There are different kind of stones on the market. Most of the stones, actually all the stones, unless it's amber and some other specimens or species of gemstones, that they actually are more valuable if they have certain kind of inclusions. Sorry. Yeah. In the average, let's say as a rule of thumb, the least inclusions in the gemstone, the more valuable the gemstone is. But for some gemstones, like for example the emeralds, the oiling is an ancient practice that have been used to increase their beauty and the clarity, and is internationally recognized as an acceptable treatment for the stone. Even though, of course, as usual, an emerald without any inclusion, it's more valuable than an emerald with full of inclusions. The emerald can show different kind of inclusions, different phases of inclusions according to where they were mined. For example, you got single phase inclusion, two phases inclusion, and three phases inclusion. That means that the single phase inclusion, it is only either one only element inside, which is might be water, it might be air or solid. A two phases inclusion can be water and a gas, and the three phases inclusion can be water, gas, and a solid. Emeralds show many times. It's very, very frequent to see these three phases inclusions and two phases inclusions inside. So if you are trying to fill up, to crack fill the emeralds, we should try to keep the temperature below the boiling point of water, for obvious reasons, because when the water evaporates, it builds up pressure inside of every container. So if the container is actually the bubble or the crack where it's trapped inside of a gemstones, if you overheat the crystal above the boiling point of water, that pressure built inside of a crack can actually expand it, and it can also result in catastrophic consequences, like destroying the stone completely. So when oiling an emerald, you should keep this in mind in your filling up cycles. Why do we have to rise up the temperature? Now, the oils and the resins used to fill up the gemstones, they usually decrease the viscosity with temperature. It means that higher temperature makes them thinner. Now, a thinner product has higher capabilities, penetrative capabilities of a thicker, heavier product. So if the oil that you're using is thinner, it has more chances to penetrate deep inside of crevices, the crevice, instead of a thick, gooey stuff. That's why we have to rise up a bit the temperature to allow these products to be thinner and to be more penetrative. Okay. Crystals are very rigid solids. So if you should always try to avoid completely, or as much as you can, a temperature shock. Means that if you want to heat up a crystal or a very rigid material, you should rise the temperature slowly. That's why you don't heat up the oil or the resin that you want to fill in the cracks and then you plunge in to the stone into it, because you're going to have a thermal shock. Now, temperature modify the size of a crystal, and some parts of a crystal has different compositions and different impurities inside. These impurities and these crystal bendings and structure modification of bends into it have a different thermal expansion than the normal pure crystal. So if you have an area in the crystal that is it expands more than the ones surrounding it because of these reasons, what happens is that if you don't allow the whole material to expand slowly, you will actually create a new crack. You will allow the stone to release the pressure between the two tiny little difference of composition or structure that will result in a crack. So when about the temperature, I have to tell you again that you have to always avoid thermal shock. That means that you heat up the oil or the resin from cold together with the stones in it, so that everything starts from room temperature and you bring it up to the temperature you wish, but all together and slowly, gradually. Okay. The same thing when you actually reduce the temperature. You don't just take off the material from the oil, the hot oil or the hot resin, but instead you let everything cool off very, very slowly. Don't submit it to fanning, or don't submit it to water, to cold air, stuff like that. Just keep it protected in a way that it can be as smooth and sweet as you can do it. As concerning the temperature, I have to tell you that you mustn't reach, or you mustn't exceed the boiling point of water, because especially in emeralds, because of the reasons I told you, water expansion, I mean gas. And also you should always remain within the temperature margins allowed by the resin. You don't want to cook the resin. You don't want to make it yellow with the temperature. So if you excess, or if you exceed the limits of temperature for the resins, for example, you can have different problems. You can have a problem that is yellowing, becomes yellowish, or you can actually destroy the bonding properties of the resin itself. So once you're going to try to like seal it completely, it will not work, because you actually destroyed the resin itself. Now, the other aspect of the filling up of the gemstones is pressure. You could fill up successfully a stone, submitting the stone to the normal ambient pressure, which is of 1 atmosphere, more or less. Now, the sea level, and with average barometric values. Okay, let's say, you know, at normal temperature, normal pressure that you breathe in out the air. You could do that, but the problem is that inside of the cracks of the stone, which reach the surface, because you cannot treat cracks which they don't reach the surface. That means that, you see, if the crack, if this is material and that's a crack and this on top is the surface, the media that you put in has to have access to the inside of the crack. Otherwise, there is no way. If here the surface is closed, is sealed, there is no way you can ever fit anything inside of a crack. So if the crack is open, then there is a chance to fill it up. The problem is that in that crack there is air. It's not vacuumed. There is air inside. So what you want to do is, what happens is, with the temperature, what you do with the crack, you open it slightly. The media becomes more liquid, so it has a chance to penetrate inside, and that's it. That's what happens at normal pressure of, you know, ambient pressure. But to make it more effective, we do the same, so expansion and um, thinning of the material, plus removal of the air inside of a crevices of a crack, so that once that the vacuum is released, only the media can penetrate back inside to fill up again. Okay, how we do that? So what we do is we heat up the stone and the liquid, and we submit it while we're heating it up to a vacuum. The stronger the vacuum, the better, because all the air was going to be sucked out. In fact, if you see even in the video that I showed to you, I made at the beginning, you will see a lot of bubbles. Those bubbles is the air trapped inside of a crack, which comes out because you're lowering the pressure in the environment. So you need a pressure chamber. So you submit the stones to vacuum in the way to remove in the way that the air inside of a crack comes out. And then what happens is that if the surface and the stone is below the level of the material that you're using to fill it up, when you will release the pressure, the only thing we can go inside of that crack to fill it up back again is not the air, because it's sealed by the surface of the material that you're using. So that material will actually penetrate in it, bringing the pressure to zero again. Means bringing the pressure, equalizing the pressure within outside environment, which is 1 atmosphere. Okay, so what you do is you heat up the material, at the same time you vacuum the material, and you don't release the pressure until you're sure that all the air is off the crack. Once you've done that, you can repeat that 2-3 times further. Let's be clear here. Once you are sure that that you took off all the air from the cracks and you release the pressure again, so you allow the air to go back inside, you can vacuum again, still heating it up. You can submit the materials to be vacuumed again in the way that you create inside of a crack a sort of pump, because the oil come out because you suck it back again, and then you pressure again inside, out and in, slowly. Every time it goes back inside, it tries to reach further down, more further. So you will have a better result. Okay. So once you've done with the cycling, with this kind of cycling for the vacuuming and the heating, you allow the thing at the normal pressure to slowly cool down until it's at room temperature. After that, if it's an oil, you just clean it. If it's a resin, you clean up the resin from the surface of a stone and you dip it inside of a hardener. What happens is that in the crack we have now filled up the crack, the gap in between the material. We fill it up with a material which has more or less the same refractive index of the material that we are covering, which are filling up. but the surface is open to the air. Cool. Now, once you clean it up very nicely, there's going to be the crack with that material sticking out at the air. What we do is we dip it inside of the hardener. The hardener will seal, will react with only with the surface of the resin which is exposed. Okay, and will harden it, sealing it. So below that, the thing is going to be still fluid, but on top is going to be sealed. That is with the resin. Okay, that's the way you fill up a gemstone. I always suggest to do the filling up after you're cutting, after you cut the gemstone. Why? For many reasons are very logic. The first reason is that when you cut a gemstone, you will actually expose cracks or crevices which were not exposed before cutting, because there would be more material on top of it. That's the first reason. The second reason is that when you use any media to connect it to the dop, to fasten it to the dop, especially if you use the wax, you're going to heat up the stone, and if there is anything inside of the crack, it's going to come up and interfere with your bonding. The stone can also be heated up. If you don't use the wax, you can be heated up by the friction against the lap while you're polishing it, also causing potential damages or the detachment of the stone itself from the dop. That's why I always recommend to if you want really to do it, because that's your choice, the stone is going to be valued less for sure. And in any case, I always recommend you, if you're selling a filled up stone, to make it notice, to say to the buyer that have been filled up. Otherwise, you're selling something which is not the truth, and that's fraud. That's fraud. Okay, that's it. So yeah, that's the way it is. That's the way you act. You cut it. If you want, you fill it up, but you sell it always as a filled up stone. For emeralds, that wouldn't matter that much, because that's a common use in worldwide. For other stones, that will impact very much their value. So that's all I can tell you about these procedures of filling up gemstones, and especially the emeralds. Not many stones can be like higher refractive index stones. You ask many questions. I got questions about being able to fill up, for example, corundums. Well, you theoretically could do that. You can fill up a corundum with oil or with high refractive index resin. With these techniques, you will not succeed in taking off the defect, the optical defect, because the corundum has a very high refractive index. That's why what they do is they do the same procedure at very high temperatures using fluid materials like glass and other stuff, which has a much higher refractive index, and they suck it inside of the crevices like that. This is let's say, this method that I'm telling you is a cold filling, relatively. Okay. Yeah, I tried sometimes to fill up corundums, and the results were not good, and for obvious reasons, because of a high refractive index. The only advantage you have is that you replace the air, which has a very low refractive index, with something which has a higher refractive index, so it's less obvious, but it's not clear like you're trying to fill up a quartz or a morganite or an aquamarine or an emerald, which works much better. Yeah. So I'm putting down on the description the link where you can get a good resin for it, for the filling, for the emeralds filling. And I would say, you know, I hope you like my videos, and I'm trying to give out as much information's available for free to everybody. I did these videos because for a while in my life I had to be far away from my family for a couple of years because of choices of work and stuff like that. And so I thought, okay, let's, in case that I would go, like I would go away from this earth, I would say, you know what, let me leave all my knowledge available to my sons in case that they want to learn how to cut the gemstones. That's why I started making these videos. But then it became like a fun activity too. And I thought, you know, maybe many other people may be interested in learning this exciting job. And, you know, it gives you, this kind of job can give you a lot of satisfaction, a lot of, um, it can give you a lot of rewards, like, you know, for yourself, what you do, what you're able to do. It's very nice. So I thought, okay, let's actually do it for everybody. So I'm trying to get out to you guys my experience, all my experience about gemstone cutting and treatments and everything that I've learned in the subject out of direct experimentation. And so if you feel like supporting me in any way, I also put my PayPal link. It's completely up to you guys. I'm not asking anything, but if you like to help and support me in more concrete way, you're welcome to do so through that link. So for the moment, I thank you so much again to everybody, and yeah, God bless you, and see you in the next video. Ciao, ciao.